Thank you very much, Zinhle. Thank you. Thank you. Greetings to everybody. Good morning, members of the media. And thank you for attending this press conference at short notice. I appreciate your presence and your willingness to hear directly from me as the chairperson of the Section 22 committee established to investigate abuses within the Christian sector. Before I proceed, allow me to acknowledge and introduce those who are seated with me today and who will, if necessary, assist in responding to questions which you may ask. Maybe we'll do the introductions later. My presentation is as this topic, the state of the church in South Africa. Important update on the CRL state versus the Christian church in the context of the Section 22 committee. We all know there are some very unclear things going on between the Christian church and the CRL, maybe also the state. So I'm here to explain those and to give you a background of what happened. And then after that, I will also announce that the best thing I can do is really to resign from the CRL, which I will do, I've done already. I've called this press conference because I have decided that it has become necessary in the interest of transparency, constitutional accountability and personal integrity of myself to resign as chairperson of the Section 22 committee of the Christian sector of the CRL Rights Commission. And I feel that I need to explain the circumstances under which I'm resigning. To give you some background, I had believed I was approached to chair the Section 22 committee because of my background and experience at the intersection of culture, religion, governance, and scholarship. I must also say maybe also linguistics, because I'm an author of books in Zulu and in English as well. So it's a field that I know very well. I was present at and co-organized the 1998 National Conference that gave conceptual birth to what later became known as the CRL Rights Commission, at a time when I served as Deputy Director General for Arts and Culture in the Department of Arts, Culture, Science and Technology. Although the Act was passed in 2002, the conceptualization had started in that conference on the 24th of September, 1998. I am an ordained Christian minister, a lifelong churchman, an academic who has spent decades studying religion, culture, theology, governance, and constitutional democracy. I have served both the church and the state, and I have always sought to do so with fidelity, balance, and integrity. It was therefore not surprising to me that I was approached as an outsider to the Commission, precisely because I was not embedded in its internal affairs and because I could bring objectively an independent, scholarly, and faith-rooted perspective to a highly sensitive national task. My appointment was confirmed in writing on 25 April, and it started being operational on the 15th of April, 2025. And it was clear. I was going to chair the Section 22 committee to call and preside over its meetings independently and to conduct extensive research into abuses within the Christian religious sector with a view to protecting religious freedom but not undermine it. I wish to emphasize that there was no reference whatsoever in my letter of appointment to the development of a legislative framework or to any form of state control of the Christian church and religion in South Africa. On the contrary, my understanding was that the task before me and the Section 22 committee was to explore self-regulation grounded in scripture, in church history, also grounded in sound theology, and the lived experiences of Christian communities in South Africa, which are very diverse. I therefore approach this task as an academic because when confronted with complex and sensitive mandate, one does not work in isolation. I conducted extensive research and shared draft papers with theologians, church leaders, and scholars across denominations so that they could give me a feedback if my thinking was on the right or not. I did so openly and transparently because this is how scholarship works. Ideas are always tested and critiqued before they become, accepted as facts. I also believe that this process had to win the confidence of the Christian church and not to undermine the Christian church. I come now to the issues of the Section 22 committee. I need to state for the record that from the outset I have been concerned about perceived irregularities in the Section 22 committee. To this day, I do not know whether the Section 22 committee was properly constituted by a formal resolution of the Commission. I also don't know whether my appointment had gone through the Commission or not. Those are things that left me thinking. However, I became aware later that some commissioners, at least one, Advocate Sipho Mantula, did and does not see the need for the committee at all. I do not know what process was followed to appoint me, as I've said, or the other members of the committee. Some were nominated by selected church groupings, identified by Mrs. Tawum Kwanazi Tlaluva, the CRL chair. Others appear to have been simply co-opted by the CRL chair. You go to a meeting and you are a chairperson and there's a new member. And you don't know where she comes from and how she came here. And you dare not ask. New members would arrive at meeting without explanation or consultation with myself. My only formal dealings were with the CRL chair, who appointed me as a chair, but who in practice exercised complete control over the committee and all its meetings. I was also deeply troubled when I learned that the chair of the COCTA Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, had expressed serious unease about the Section 22 process. I was shown correspondence confirming that the 2018 COCTA Portfolio Committee, this correspondence was shown to me by Dr. Zweli Mkhize, report had expired and was never adopted by Parliament, thereby removing any legal basis for the reviving of its recommendations. The CRL chair, when this was drawn to her attention, she dismissed it completely and entirely and stated that no one could tell her or the CRL Rights Commission what to do. Despite the chair's repeated statements to the media that she was handing over the process to the committee and that the CRL executive would only play a logistical and secretarial role, from the beginning there were procedural irregularities and undue interference by the CRL chair in particular. Despite my letter of appointment stating clearly that I was to call and preside over meetings, this never occurred. The CRL chair, through what she calls the secretariat that is headed by the CEO, Mr. Mafadza, of the CRL, called every meeting. Even at one stage when I wrote a letter to say, I think we need a meeting now, and this is the draft agenda, can the secretariat then write letters which I will sign? That was dismissed. So I was also invited to meetings. The CRL chair, through what she calls secretariat, that is headed by the CEO of the CRL, called every meeting. She chaired most of them, often for extended periods. The agenda were drawn up by the commission or the secretariat, and I had no input on them. The Secretariat operated under the authority of the CRL executive. I never presided over a single meeting from beginning to the end. And this means that my repeated attempts to establish the independence of the committee from the CRL chair and the commission were not allowed to take effect. How it would happen is that she would come in the beginning of every meeting and talk for an hour or 2 or 3, and then leave it to me to find my way, not knowing where we are with the agenda. I thought I found that very embarrassing, actually. Toxic, exclusionary, and intimidating process. I also learned from the committee members' admissions to me that there were private meetings taking place between the CRL chair and some selected members, some kind of cabal, outside of the formal committee meetings. Somebody that becomes very much mentioned because he also confirmed to me, Dr. Reverend John Maloma, who says he represents TIASA, relayed such information to me at least once or maybe even twice. When I confronted him about his rudeness to me every time I got a small chance to chair a meeting of the Section 22 committee. This explained the strong synchrony between the CRL chair's stated preferences and the positions consistently advanced by a small inner circle within the committee, particularly on matters related to regulation and legislative control. You could say that they hold other meetings somewhere when they come to meetings, to the committee meetings. And maybe that's why she always wanted to chair the meetings. And then I would sit like Pastor Brett here, sometimes for 2 days, saying nothing. Committee meetings, my research was ignored. My questions were dismissed. My leadership role was very hollow. Committee meetings became increasingly toxic. Those who questioned the direction of the committee were marginalized or attacked. Entire sectors of Christianity, particularly the Pentecostals and charismatic churches, were treated with open suspicion and hostility. The SACC also expressed its reservations about the process. As a result, the document released on 19 December 2025 was hurriedly finalized in meetings chaired by the CRL chair in an apparent attempt to, as she said, preempt an anticipated public announcement by the SACC, which was expected to express its unease with the Section 22 committee. That came from Mr. Reverend Maloma, that the SACC was planning to do this, to distance itself from the CRL and the Section 22 committee. And so she called a hurried meeting and sat there as they were writing, and she was saying, no, write this there, no, you can't write that there, no, put it like this, and so on, for 2 days, and I was not allowed to say anything. So I sat like he's sitting here for 2 days, only standing up to go to the toilet, come back and listen. That was December 17 and 18. I was alarmed by continued discussion about excluding so-called disruptive elements, or having by invitations only consultations, and by proposals to involve the SAPS, including references to policing and use of force against the disruptive elements, and even tear gas where necessary, to prevent dissenting voices from participating. Although I was present in the room, as I've said, I could not participate as the atmosphere was just too toxic to do so. On the third day, I opted to go back to my province of KZN by the sea. And after telling the chair that I did not see any reason to stay as I had no role to play in the drafting of the Section 22 document titled Final Draft Christian Sector Self-Regulatory Framework in South Africa. The document itself was never presented to the full Section 22 committee, so this was a small writing team. So it was never authorized to go out by the full Section 22 committee, but they hurriedly took it out because they feared that the SACC was about to do something. I must also address claim made repeatedly in public by the chair that the Section 22 committee represents 45 million Christians in South Africa. Based on my direct experience as purported by the chair, I do not believe this claim can be factually supported. As the work of the committee progressed, it became increasingly clear that significant Christian structures and constituencies were excluded, either by design or by consequence, and that the committee could not credibly claim to speak for the breadth and diversity of Christianity in South Africa. In particular, while Reverend Maloma sat on the committee claiming to represent TIASA, and while he actively supported the CRL chair's regulatory agenda and mandate, this representation was his representation was formally repudiated by TIASA's own constituency. Three of the largest and most significant denominations that together constitute the majority of TIASA's membership and footprint, namely the AFM, Assemblies of God, and Full Gospel Church, wrote formally and unequivocally to renounce both TIASA's position and its participation in the Section 22 committee, and any claim that TIASA was representing them in this process. So he's not representing TIASA, but he's close to the chair. In addition, the South African Council of Churches, historically one of the most significant and broadly representative Christian bodies in our country, is not formally part of the Section 22 committee. They came only once, and then they left, so they're not there. Charismatic Christians are formally viewed as enemies of the CRL in the Section 22 committee. In one of my advisory notes to the chair of the CRL, I expressed my discomfort about the CRL's apparent us versus them approach to the brief and work of the Section 22. I even wrote some short paper that said you cannot have the doctrine of us versus them in Christ. For all falling under one body of Christ. But she became very unhappy with that. Unfortunately, the terms of reference of the Section 22 committee keep changing almost daily. I was surprised during the launch event of the committee on the 2nd of October 2025, where I was required to read the terms of reference to the audience. And I had the terms of reference that were in my letter of appointment. So I had them, I took them, and I was going towards the stage. While I was on my way to the podium to speak and holding the terms of reference which are contained in my letter of appointment, a CRL official hurriedly gave me a new set of terms of reference to read out to the public and to comment about them. Well, I'm a creative writer, but sometimes it becomes very embarrassing when you read a sentence and you don't know what the next sentence is saying. That was embarrassing to me, even a bit dishonest on their part, because those new terms of reference were signed by the chairperson of the CRL Commission. So I had to read them. But things that were there, I was seeing them for the first time. And this is October, and I've been there since the 15th of April, and I've been working on using these terms of reference, trying to be an honest man, maybe. Taken together, these realities reveal a serious representational deficit at the heart of the process. One cannot credibly claim to represent tens of millions of Christians while excluding major denominations, proceeding without the SACC, marginalizing the Pentecostals and charismatic churches, and dismissing dissenting voices as disruptive elements. I also got taken aback with some racist remarks during the writing on the 17th and 18th. I must also place on record my profound shock and dismay at the racist and defamatory language used in meetings by the chair, especially that meeting, to describe critics of her agenda. There is one, Mr. Michael Swain, who is Executive Director of Freedom of Religion, South Africa, FORSA. He was referred to as the white man from England, who came from England to South Africa in 1983 to enjoy apartheid. Well, I was not aware of that. When they presented their document, or soon thereafter, Reverend Maloma repeated this when he and the chair presented that document, that people must not listen to the white man from England who came to South Africa in 1983 to enjoy apartheid. I thought that was in direct conflict with the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, which outlaws all forms of racism. Even more disturbing was the chair's personal fixation with Mr. Swain all the time. I was told directly by the CRL chair that she had laid criminal charges against him for criminal injury, and that pressure was being exerted on the SAPS via the outgoing Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamil Tabatohi, to ensure his arrest before Christmas, and that she hoped he would be in prison facing 5 years in jail. I was shocked that the chair of a Chapter 9 institution would speak in this way about a citizen whose record really, I think, is very good. Many years to defending the church and religious freedom in South Africa. And defending religious freedom is not only in Michael Swain. Those organizations are found all over the world, similar organizations. I thought maybe from what I heard, she was unhappy that he was busy criticizing this process, of which I was also, as chair, very uncomfortable. Such remarks could be false also, and also offensive. They are also deeply inconsistent with the spirit of our Constitution, and this comes from a constitutional body. As I've said, the final draft document, in November, round about the 9th of November, I was presented with a document titled Final Draft Christian Sector Self-Regulatory Framework in South Africa. I don't know where it came from, but I read it, and I said this was going to create huge problems with the Christian sector, because it already had some kind of regulatory framework that, for example, some strange things. If you go to confess to your pastor, the law must force you as a pastor to reveal to the congregation what Musa was confessing about, or even go to the police. They also say there's nothing called fivefold ministry. And I said, wow, never heard of it. Its sudden appearance, I don't know from where, shocked me. I warned clearly and unequivocally that the document was not fit for purpose, not scripturally sound, not theologically sound, and constitutionally problematic. I warned that, in my view, it infringed the Constitution. Those warnings were ignored. In fact, I was attacked by certain individuals in the Section 22 committee. That cabal, I spoke about is 4 of them. There was a newly formed WhatsApp group of the Section 22 committee, but it was used to attack me for pointing out the loopholes in that document. And Reverend Maloma, as I've said, and I'm not singling out, there is 3 others which I will reveal in court, posted that he had discussed the document with the chair. During the meeting of 17 and 18 December, the CRL chair completely took over the process, usurping my role as chair of the committee. On 19 December, the document was released to the media without even being approved by the full Section 22 committee. And without my approval as appointed chair, I was supposed to sign that document, sign it off. I was excluded from meaningful participation on that final day and was not present at the media conference on that day. To date, that final document has not been shared with me as the chair of the Section 22 committee. It was not given to me. I don't have it. And many were phoning, hey, can you tell us, what is it saying there? I say, I'm busy with Christmas. I don't know that document. Never heard of it. The public and Christian leaders have been calling and writing to me as chairman of the Section 22 committee, and I have embarrassingly been unable to address the document. Why am I resigning? I have done everything within my power to discharge my duties faithfully and in line with my appointment. However, I can no longer serve as chair of a committee, the processes of which I do not control, the outcomes of which I do not endorse, and the existence of which is being used as I'm being used as a front with no powers. But there's a predetermined agenda, and I don't know where it comes from. And that explains why the chair takes most of the time chairing that committee, and I sit like Pastor Bert here. To remain would compromise my integrity. I'm an ordained and commissioned minister of the word and sacraments. My loyalty is to the Great Commission commanded by Christ Jesus in Matthew 28, verses 19 to 20. I must also point out that the church history tells us that the church has, in all free societies and democratic societies, been self-regulating for its entire existence over the past 2,000 years. The church knows how to self-regulate, even under very extreme circumstances. In the year 312, when Emperor Constantine, 325 AD, tried to get involved with the church, which had prayed for him to win some battle, he asked the bishops to meet in Nicaea and draft the Nicaean Creed. It was never drafted by outsiders. It has always been insiders. And even those that complained later, Martin Luther, 1517, was dealing with the Pope and the church structures and had to go out and start a new movement, the Protestant movement, internally. It has never been the function of the state to regulate the church, except in a few occasions where church and state are one. There are countries like that. For these reasons, I hereby tender my resignation as chairperson of the Section 22 committee, which I'm doing with immediate effect. Okay, I resigned on Monday, and I sent a letter this morning because I have been really thinking about this since the 19th of December, where I felt so humiliated. Not for the first time. Not for the first time. The entire relationship has been toxic. So I went home. I went to my church. I asked them to pray for me. I needed a solution. I got the solution to resign. It was only a matter of when. Today, confirmed. I thank you very much.
And at At this moment in time, we're also going to remind you that the statement will be made available as soon as we conclude with our proceedings. But we just maybe want to turn to the panel that is with Professor Musa Kulu, and for any comments on your behalf in support or with the specific things that have been said here. Over to the panel. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Shimikodu from the Anti-Regulation of Religion Summit. Prof, you almost made history by being the first thinker in South Africa to agree with Prof Kulu on how state and church should agree or should cooperate. And we congratulate you for not making that or reaching that milestone. Yeah. Had you continued working with Togo, you'd have crossed a point which no other thinker since this course started in 2015 has ever crossed. Togo wants South Africa to be run the way Muslim countries are run on Sharia law. She doesn't make a distinction in her mind between law and religion. And there is not a single credible platform which has shared her ideals. When she presented her recommendations to Parliament in 2018, Parliament has said, everything you say now, we take cognizance of the fact that there is criminality, but there are no religious crimes. We take cognizance of the fact that you say there are abuse of people's belief systems, but already there are enough law enforcers and laws in South Africa to deal with your concerns. But the idea that the state should come in and regulate religion in any form is unworkable, impractical, unlawful, and unnecessary. At that point, she's hiding from the public the fact that she threatened to take Parliament to court. We won't go much into that. We are here to support you. This is the right decision you've taken. And with the current constitution and the laws in South Africa, regulation of religion is a pipe dream pursued by the naive, the ignorant, and the foolish. So we embrace you. This is a very bold and brave movement, or move rather, you have taken. And having gone through your speech, you said nothing wrong. It's about time that the rest of South Africa join in. You are completely vindicating us on what we've been saying since 2015. We've been part of the religious freedom advocacy groups that have voiced their disapproval of what she's trying to do. And you are vindicating us today.
Thank you very much. I'm Pastor Bert Pretorius from the South African Community of Faith-Based Fraternals, SACOF. And we take note of Professor's resignation today. Just that you do know, those that are here today is not a cabal. In actual fact, we haven't met one another before today. So just understand, this is not like a little thing or vendetta. It's like what my brother said, what Doc said, is from 2015 is something that we've been fighting with together. And that's why we are here, to hear and to support. So once again, and I only met Professor this morning for the first time. It's the first time we've ever spoken. So do understand that. So it's not like we have backroom meetings and we're all here independently, and we're all here to address the same issues and the same things that we have been saying. So we take, excuse me, we take note of your resignation, Professor, and the statements that you have made. And from the outset, SACOF cannot ignore what is said today, and the long-standing concerns raised publicly and formally are now being explicitly confirmed by what has been said. Over the past month, SACOF has consistently warned of procedural irregularities in the establishment and operation of the Section 22 Committee, the lack of transparency and clarity regarding the mandate, the terms of reference, and representation. And then also the undue interference that undermines the independence of the committee, which we have brought up numerous times, And then, of course, the growing drift between genuine self-regulation and legislated control of religion by the state. And those are our issues and our grievances. So with the things that Prof has mentioned with personal names and personally, we've got no, we're not there, we're not first-hand witnesses to things that are taking place. But once again, it's confirming the issue. So this is not a personal attack on anybody or on the chair or on individuals whatsoever. From our point of view, we are talking about the regulation of religion in the country, which is then extremely, extremely dangerous. I think let me leave it at that. I just want to leave it short. We do take note of some of the, statements made about the Pentecostal charismatic churches and evangelical churches that have been, marked as, and we will take that up personally with the CRL Commission to get clarity on those statements made, also having, other organizations, named like TISA, for example, and, obviously we'll request a meeting with them as well to clarify because we have relationship. They are our brothers and sisters, and the people on the community are our brothers and sisters, and we will sort stuff out behind the scenes. And the last thing we want is a divided church. So it's not those that are on the committee are against those that are off the committee. It's not. It's got to do with the principle of state regulation of religion. You understand? So we're not anti people that are on the commission, so we won't allow the commission to divide the church either. So you've got to understand that. So let me leave it at that and we can discuss more things moreover.
My name is Tom Tamaha, and I represent Without Walls and the CRL Meta Group. It's a think tank and advocacy group. We have listened carefully to the statement delivered at this media briefing conference by Reverend Professor Musa Kulu. What is said publicly today actually confirms what we and many others have been saying consistently since 2017, actually. And so this is not new information to us. The irregularities, the interference, the intimidation, and lack of proper representation, and even the predetermined agenda of state control over the church have been raised many times by church leaders, legal experts, and faith communities across South Africa. And today, those concerns have been formally placed on record by the very person appointed to chair the Section 22 committee. We therefore state, the following: the CRL Meta think tank and advocacy group Without Walls, and I know for the fact that there are other organizations that we work with listening. I mean, one that is led by Reverend Templeton Mbekwa and the KDF Religious Forum. And we reaffirm our long-held position. One is that we reject the agenda of the CRL Rights Commission to regulate religion. And we call for the immediate disbandment of the Section 22 committee. And we welcome the resignation of Reverend Prof Musa Kulu as the chairperson of the Section 22 committee, noting that his resignation exposes a deeply flawed and compromised process. And we now call for the resignation of and the removal of the chairperson of the CRL Rights Commission, Ms. Prof Kulu, whose conduct and interference have made it impossible for this process to retain credibility. This is not a personal attack. It is a matter of constitutional accountability and moral responsibility. The Church of Jesus Christ in South Africa does not derive its authority from commissions, committees, or political offices. The Church belongs to Jesus alone. For over 2,000 years, it has been self-regulating, accountable, and corrected within, guided by the Scripture and conscience and the Holy Spirit. Abuse must be dealt with firmly and lawfully through existing criminal and civil law. What we reject is the use of abuse as a pretext to introduce state control over doctrine, leadership, theology, and worship. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Pastor Mkuba of UBN and of SA Church Defenders. Greetings to all of you in the name of Jesus. We welcome the stepping down, the resignation of Professor Musa Kulu from the Section 22 Committee of the CRL. And the reasons that he stated, the reasons that he provided for stepping down, they clearly point to his refusal to continue participating in actions that are illegal and unconstitutional. And this reaffirms what we have been talking about all along, what we have been saying, that what is happening now is not constitutional. And his decision underscores the importance of fidelity to the Constitution, which remains the cornerstone of the rule of law and democracy in our land, South Africa. And as the SA Church Defenders, we want to make it clear that this matter is not going to be left unattended. We will continue to contend earnestly and consistently for the protection of Christian rights and freedoms. And we extend our appreciation to all Christians, all Christian formations, all those who are standing against the regulation of the church by the state in our country, South Africa. Those who are committed to safeguarding the constitutional rights and religious liberties. And this makes us to be more determined to push on and make every South African to be aware that we have got a problem that is happening in our country that cannot be allowed to go on. And we have already said it that we are going to be having marches throughout the country because this cannot be accepted. What I've heard now is horrifying. So even on the 12th of March, we are going to be in KZN, in Durban, marching to say that our freedoms, our rights cannot be tampered with. And we will continue to engage Parliament in this issue because we are still saying there, let them remove Mrs. Togot Kaluva. She is not fit, she is not competent enough to can run a Chapter 9 institution, the CRL, because the CRL is supposed to protect and to promote all faith. But with her, it seems like she has got this vendetta, as confirmed now from the words that we heard from Professor Musa. And I want to say that the SACD will continue, will proceed with the court case against the CRL. It has now become more urgent following the disclosures made by the professor here regarding the formation and even the operations of the Section 22 committee. These disclosures confirm what we have consistently mentioned, that the committee was illegally constituted and that the CRL chairperson has been operating outside the confines of the Constitution and the law. And I want to say that the statements that are consistently being uttered by the CRL chairperson, Mrs. Togot Kaluva, they consistently portray that she is adamant that she will get the church to be regulated, which we are saying there cannot happen during our time. That cannot happen during our time because it's even illegal, it is unconstitutional. And we call for the disbandment of this Section 22 committee, and we call for the removal of Mrs. Toko Kaluva. And South Africa has got many challenges. We have got criminality. People are dying every day. We have got so many problems, and the church should not be scapegoated. The church is a moral pillar of society. It cannot be scapegoated for the ills of the South African society. Where criminality exists, we have got laws. Let the laws be applied without prejudice. We are reiterating that religious freedoms must be respected and be protected in accordance with the Constitution. And we remain committed to defending constitutional democracy, the rule of law, and religious freedoms in South Africa. And we thank you, Professor Musa, for what you have done. And your words really, they are reassuring. And we would call for Christians to be united during this time so that we can be able to stand against what is coming against us. We say no to state regulation of the church. Thank you.
Thank you to our dignitaries and to the members of the public who have just heard, who is alongside Rev Musa Kulu here. And before we end with our proceedings, we are going to open to the members of the media for some questions and answers. So we are in the same level of transparency that you have shared. We're going to ask one question to be answered directly, and for obvious reasons, I'm sure the questions will be directed to now the former chairperson of the Section 22 committee who has resigned with immediate effect. So we'll take some hands, and we've got a roaming mic. We ask that you please speak directly and clearly into the mic. Yes.
Sorry, just so that they can have a context when they ask questions. I have, for obvious reasons, copied this letter of resignation to President Ramaphosa, to the Speaker of Parliament, Mrs. Togotitiza, to the CRL Rights Commission, to Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa, to the Chairperson of the NCOP, and to the Chair of the COCTA Portfolio Committee, Dr. Zweli Mkhize. So that gives a context. The letter is already at those levels. I thank you.
Thank you for that clarity, and we ask that you do, when you ask your question, speak directly into the mic, because it is being recorded and it's currently being broadcast on the YouTube page from SACOF. So the questions can be asked to any of those who are sitting here before us, and we'll take the first question right there at the back. please make sure that you state your name and which media house you are from, and we'll take I see you there, and then we'll recognize you, ma'am, there as the second question, and right here in front as the third. But let's ask the first question, we'll get an answer, and then go in that order. Thank you. Sir, you may start.
Good morning. My name is Tato. I am from News 24. I have, quite a few questions for you, Reverend Kulu. So I was at the 19th of December briefing, and I went through the draft framework, and I wanted to know from you, what should that framework have looked like if you disagree with aspects of it? Because when I went back through it, I didn't see the mention of the confessions must be disseminated to the congregation and sent to SAPS. I mean, maybe it wasn't something that I didn't have eyes to that you might have, but I just wanted some clarity on that. And also, as far as I understand, it's a draft framework that, further consultations are expected in the future. I guess I can understand if your main reason for leaving the committee was, the toxic environment. So I wanted to see how much you agreed or disagreed with the contentions within the framework. And I guess from that, was the Section 22 committee not to create guidelines for self-regulation? Because I don't think it's controversial to say that there's quite a bit of, child abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse taking place in churches across the country. And, which I take as a sign that clearly more needs to be done, and clearly the self-regulation of the churches in the way that it's been happening before is inadequate. So I guess I wanted your comment on that and where the purpose of the Section 22 committee was going to be going. That's everything from me. Thank you.
No, thank you, Tato. About some of the doctrinal issues, which may not be in that document, is what was being discussed. That the final outcome must look like this. The doctrine of confession of sins must be interfered with. For example, the issues of fivefold ministry must be interfered with. The document should have started by acknowledging the scriptural basis of church regulation. You go through the scriptures, and then you quote those verses that relate to regulation of behavior and all of that. In the epistles, those letters written by the apostles, you find a lot of that. Sometimes they even contradict. But it's there because it's dealing with the Christian sector. So you start with the scriptures. Then you go to church history. How has regulation of churches happened over the past 2,000 years? It starts right from the first chapter of the book of Acts, when they elected the replacement of Judas Iscariot. Then it goes on and on and on. And as I say, it's a lot of it, even outside of the scriptures. You will then go to the Apostles' Creed, where the apostles were themselves trying to regulate how to believe what is heresy and what is acceptable. When do you see someone that has gone off? Jesus Christ himself warns about false prophets, but he didn't say that governments must regulate and pass laws against false prophets. He warned and told us how to deal with false prophets as his followers. So you find that. Then you can go to the Creed of Nicaea, which was started in the year 325 and took 56 years to complete. Because the bishops and the theologians and everybody, they had their own opinions. And these are people who are knowledgeable from experience and position and so on. And the bishops, of course, come directly from the scriptures, and theologians always come from time to time through reading and so on. It took 56 years to complete. Now, you want to regulate because some pastor there has been touching the buttocks of women, and you want to pass a law overnight. It took 56 years for one creed to be completed by the church itself. And then you go to 1054, when the year 1054, when the Eastern Orthodox and the Orientals left the Roman Catholic Church. It was on the basis of misunderstandings of internal issues by internal people. Then you go to 1517, Martin Luther. That is the church itself doing its own work. It does not need outsiders. Then what happens? He gives birth to the Protestant movement. All these churches now called mainline churches, from one person who objected internally in the church, not from a counselor or some minister of education or some speaker of parliament objecting or some commission of some sort. One person, an insider, Professor Martin Luther. Then gives birth to all. And then later you get the Pentecostals coming out of excitement, and then the Great Revival. And then in South Africa and in Africa you get the African-initiated churches. And then after that, with the Great Revival of the 40s and 50s, we then have the charismatics now. That is, I thought we would acknowledge that kind of church history, so that we don't attack Pentecostals and attack charismatics outside of the church history context. God is today speaking through the charismatic churches. And then we deal with that. And then we deal with theological issues. How does God call people? Some people say God does not talk to anyone and so on. God does. In my studies, I went through a long essay paper called Hearing the Voice of God. How to hear it. And that takes you even to the prophetic ministry. So you hear all these comments being made by people without clarifying the issues of theology. I thought that document should have had that clarified. And then lastly, the doctrinal issues. There are 42 to 50,000 denominations, Christian denominations in the world today. In South Africa, it's more close to 10,000 or maybe roundabout. How do you have one kind of regulation over people who are so diverse? How do you achieve it? So you can see that it's complicated. The issue of talking about abuses is fine. Actually, I've never spoken to any pastor or any church leader who said we should not talk about it. It's something that the church should have a look at. But I became convinced in November when they presented me with that document that this was really out of order. Thank you.
Can I add? Thank you, Prof. Thank you for that understanding, giving there. And I just want to add to that. It's impossible to find a set of criteria or agreed upon base of knowledge. When it comes to the profession is not the same like law or medicine or accounting. So it's impossible within the church framework to find a set of criteria. But criminal law applies. There's no such thing as child abuse. There's no such thing as spiritual child abuse. If you're a lawyer and you touch a child, if you're a policeman and you touch a child, there's no such thing as spiritual child abuse. So when it comes to the criteria and where we find ourselves, criminal law is criminal law. There's no such thing as a spiritual crime. And this is what Professor is trying to explain, is that when we're talking about the regulating of the church, you're regulating the spiritual aspects. We've got law for the criminal aspects, and we are all, churches are registered. You're either registered with the Companies Act, and we're subject to the SARS and South African Revenue Services, and we have to give reports. We all got constitutions, or you're registered with social development. So what we're saying, there's enough laws and rules to regulate. And the two aspects they speak about the whole time is they talk about the doom prophet, and they talk about omotosa. And those two are mentioned all the time. But our doom prophet was, he was criminally charged and he was sentenced. So the law dealt with that. Yes, there were also church pastors that dealt with him and stuff like that, but he was criminally charged and criminally dealt with. With Omotosa, 32 charges against him, and the church, the state bungled that, according to the magistrate, bungled that situation in that she had to release him on that. So, and then we bring that aspect there. If you say that, well, we had to regulate him. If the state can't even regulate him with all the resources and everything, then what do you expect the church to do? So can we do better? All of us can do better. Every section, the law can do better, the police can do better, the politicians can do better. Every one of us can do better. And yes, there is a process going forward. And there is things that we do have. And it's not that the CRL doesn't play an important role. We acknowledge the importance of the role that it plays. All we're saying is the way they're going about it is wrong. And the Section 21 committee is not needed. So once again, it seems that they want to take these things and say, well, the church is at fault. But all of these things that you find, these abuses, you find that in every sector. It's not just in the church. And we've got laws for that. So what we're saying with the law, do your job. Apply the law, and you can take anybody to court, and you still got civil courts available as well. So that's what we're saying. But you cannot regulate the church, because what happens, the regulation gets weaponized to the degree that the church is not allowed to speak, and we can't speak truth to power. And then you start jailing pastors, and you start jailing members, and like we're seeing in many countries at the moment.
Thank you, Pastor Bert. We can go with the next question. Thank you.
Okay.
You can just rise so that we can catch you. Thank you.
Thanks, Zinhle. Shonim Timkulu from ENCA. Like my colleague Tato, I have a few questions to ask. Let me see. Maybe the first one, it touches on what Pastor Bert Pretorius was mentioning. Just South Africa is technically a secular state, despite the number of Christians. Is it realistic to try and have a framework to regulate the church within state involvement? That's my first question. But also, along with what you've just said now, that there's no such thing as spiritual child abuse. Practically, what is the church doing to deal with these issues? I mean, so you mentioned the doom pastor, the omotoso, but on the ground, children are getting raped by pastors, so-called pastors, whatever you call them. Members of the church are giving their money to pastors, etc., promises, whatever, all those sorts of things. I'm not even talking at that high level. I'm talking on the ground. What is happening where people are being abused? What is the church doing to show their voice in those situations, to show their whatever in those situations practically, that people can see, society can see that actually this is what the church is doing about all of these things? Because I imagine you would all agree with me that the perception right now is that the church isn't doing much and is possibly silent, and the silence in those situations means support, etc., that sort of thing. And then I think my next question is to Prof Kulu. It seems at this point that there are allegations and counter-allegations being made between the Prof as well as the chair of the CRL Rights Commission, because she talks about threats being made on her life or on herself because of the work that she's doing. And now from the statement, we're seeing that it seems that she is making threats or intimidating people, that sort of thing. Just as a South African, what is going on? And it just seems like a bit of it's politics basically, and that the South African public, I guess, is just watching. That can't be a good representation for the work that all of you, including the CRL Rights Commission, is hoping to do. And then again, Pastor Pistorius, you say you're not a cabal, but do you agree that maybe there would be a perception, because you are all here, that you would be part of that? And then just my last question for this round of questions to Dr. Kotu, just in terms of saying that the chair wants to run the country like Sharia law, in what way are you making this reference? And actually, maybe can I just, if I can squeeze in one more question, just in terms of the CRL Rights Commission itself, are the other commissioners in opposition? Are they for what is happening? Just we keep hearing, obviously, the chair and the issues there that have been ventilated about the chair, even from other bodies. What have the other commissioners said from your perception?
Thank you for that question. And yes, from my side, what the church is doing as far as the children are concerned, obviously we are a voice and we do speak. And we have got laws. Well, there's first of all the country's laws. So, you know, if you touch a child or a staff member touches a child, by law we are required to report it. Otherwise, we can, we can be prosecuted. So that is normal. That's normal. You know, we can't handle it undercover. We've got to report it and make a case at the police station, which we have done in multiple cases. Once again, then it's for the police then to go prove that. And unfortunately, just like with child abuse cases all over, just not the church, it's very difficult to prove. So that's the tough. It's tough. It's not just in the church. It's all over. It's tough. And our children do need to be protected. And we do need to do, can we do more? For sure we can do more. As a church, can we do more? For sure we can do more. With us, within our denomination and within SACOF, if anybody's dealing with children, we get a police clearance from the person, and we also check the sex offenders register. You understand? So all of that is done, and anybody that works with children, and then we also do a police clearance. We even have that. Every one of our staff members have a police clearance, and also we check on the sex register. So we deal with children. So that is common practice throughout our denomination and where we do find ourselves, just that you know that where we're at. And then the question is, do we, perceive that we are a cabal? I don't care what people perceive as to what they are. We're doing this because we've been fighting this since 2015, 2016, 2017, round about there. And, and the danger of regulating the church, which we see in countries where people are, where pastors are imprisoned. And that's when you weaponize regulation. It might be done in the right heart, and to sort out certain things, but what happens is that can be weaponized and turned and used by the state then to silence the church, that we cannot speak. And so that is the danger. So if that means I'm part of that cabal, then I'm willingly part of that cabal. But as far as the professor and his relationships, well, that's over to him. Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I really wanted to respond also to this question, because many a times when we go out to the public in opposition to the agenda to regulate the church, we get to be seen as people that are protecting abuses and abusers in the church. And I'm happy that you have raised this question, because many a times we are never really afforded the opportunity on media platforms like this to speak into this question you have raised. And you are so right in raising this question, and we must not speak past the pain that is there on the ground of people that have really suffered at the hands of abusers. So what you are describing or saying is real. Children have been abused, and not only from within the church and even outside the church. And congregants have been exploited. We're not running away from that reality. Crime has been committed by people calling themselves pastors. That reality cannot be denied, or minimized, or even spiritualized away. Where crime occurs, the church must be the first to say, report it. And so many churches are doing that. My church does that. And even those who are watching would obviously attest to our stance and our position as the church. So where crime happens, report it, investigate it. And we say, at times we are never really afforded the opportunity on media platforms like this to speak into this question you have raised. And you are so right in raising this question, and we must not, speak past the pain that is there on the ground of people that have really suffered at the hands of abusers. So what you are describing or saying is real. Children have been abused, and not only from within the church and even outside the church. And congregants have been exploited. We're not running away from that reality. Crime has been committed by people calling themselves pastors. That reality cannot be denied, or minimized, or even spiritualized away. Where crime occurs, the church must be the first to say, report it. And so many churches are doing that. My church does that. And even those who are watching would obviously attest to our stance and our position as the church. So where crime happens, report it, investigate it, and we say prosecute it. Rape is not a church matter. It is a criminal matter. Fraud is not a doctrinal issue. It is a legal matter. No collar, no title or pulpit gives immunity from the law. Now, if one is to be clear and practical on the question that you have raised or you're asking, what is the church doing? And that is what Ms. Toko Kaluva has said or asked in many of her other press meetings. And what is the society is supposed to say? But to answer that question, I would say, well, many churches already, and this is what is not being shared out there, but many churches already cooperate with law enforcement. Many churches cooperate with social workers and child protection services. But this work is often invisible because it happens quietly and responsibly, not on television. And the second thing is, where the church has failed, we have always said that the church must be able to say so. Why? Because silence protects abusers, not the gospel. Faith leaders must publicly condemn abuse, but maybe the media does not give us the opportunity to be able to do so. And lastly, the solution is not to regulate religion as a belief system. The solution is to enforce the law without exception. When the state already has laws to arrest, prosecute, and imprison offenders, So creating a religious oversight body does not protect the victims. It actually creates confusion and delays accountability. Thank you.
Yeah, in responding to the question you brought up on my statement, let me start at the beginning. The real problem with what the CRL Rights Commission is doing under the chairmanship or the chairpersonship of Prof Kulu is implementing recommendations of an obsolete paper. In 2018, when Togo presented before the parliament, that commercialization of religion report, she made certain recommendations, nothing different from what she's recommending now. And not the church, the lawmaker parliament said, what you want us to do is unnecessary because there are already enough laws and enough law enforcement agencies. She brought up issues of foreign illegal preachers, but the church is not a law enforcement agency. Our mandate was determined by Jesus. We are discipling people. We are not a law enforcement agency. You can't put the blame of illegal immigration on the church. 2, you can't put the blame of financial racketing on the church. We're not a law enforcement agency. So she presented all these recommendations before Parliament, and Parliament says they're necessary. Not the church, Parliament said we have enough laws and enough law enforcement agencies. We, however, recommend that the church self-regulates because we don't have any instruments. Laws run countries. You can't make a presentation to Parliament and expect them to take steps without putting a law in place. She wanted church affairs to be legislated. Now, I asked a question to Parliament in 2020. I said, we need the CRL Rights Commission to explain something to us. Or in the absence of regulation of religion, what happens? What should one preacher do when another rapes a girl? And they said, you shall call the cops. Okay, post-regulation. When a preacher in a regulated state sees another preacher rape a girl, who should they call? They can only call the cops. So why regulation? Hence my statement that the same way the Islamic world uses the Quran to run countries, he wants us to use the Bible to run a country. The Bible is not an instrument to run a country. The Constitution is. And the Constitution has created enough framework for the implementation of the ideals of normal society. Now, a lot of people, especially in the media space, want to create a picture that we have nothing, we have something to hide. Togo keeps reiterating that. But what they forget is we already have Parliament, which is the lawmaker, rejecting the idea that the state should regulate religion. But not only that, we already have the executive. Around 2019, President Ramaphosa explicitly came out saying, what you want us to do with religion is illegal. It's unlawful. But the Constitutional Court has made 2 rulings. First in 1998, that it does not matter how bizarre, how unconventional, how strange any religious practice is. If there's nothing harmful happening, there's nothing illegal or unlawful, let those people be. And that judgment was reiterated once more by the Constitutional Court, Judge Cameron. He said, what is unlawful with one adult, believing that when they take recommendations from their pastor to eat grass as a way of connecting to God, what is unlawful with that? Is grass eating illegal? Is it unlawful? Judge Cameron said, the Constitutional Court, he says, if someone eats grass, thinking it connects them to their God, how is that different from someone who eats bread, claiming it's the body of Christ and that connects him to our God? He says, on that matter, we cannot make a determination. It's beyond our reach. So don't create an impression that we have something to hide. The judiciary, the legislature, and the executive have already made pronouncements on these matters. But as for trying to turn us into law enforcers, Pastor Bert says something. With all the charges against Omotoso, trained law enforcers, trained prosecutors, trained policemen failed to nail the guy. I'm training theology. I'm not training criminology. Now, the call for regulation of religion is a pipe dream, and it can never be realized within the context of a constitutional democracy. There are enough laws and there are enough law enforcement. My last point is, when an inquiry was made by Freedom of Religion South Africa to the Speaker of Parliament, that here is Togo Kaluva implementing those recommendations. The Speaker says they're unimplementable because that report before Parliament lapsed. So fundamentally, there's something wrong with the process, leading to the question by the gentleman at the back there. There's fundamentally something wrong with the process of implementing the recommendations of a non-existent report. Togo tries to create the impression that they are on their own. Parliament has oversight on everything the CRL Rights Commission does. If Parliament has already said there are enough laws, there are enough law enforcement, chuck this thing out. But in the course of time, that very report that came with that kind of censure on his side lapses. What is he implementing? Self-regulation cannot be instigated by state. Any state-instigated process in self-regulation is state regulation. Self means self. And we have a lot of initiatives around the country. The organization I belong to, Freedom of Religion South, Anti-Regulation of Religion Summit, we convened a convention in 2019. And 1,000 preachers became signatories to the Albertine Declaration, which is a voluntary code of conduct. Every year we meet. We're meeting again in March. None of the 1,000 pastors who committed themselves to the code of conduct have committed any crimes. Crime is crime. Whether it happens in a church, in a tavern, at home, crime is crime. We can't have added definitions of crime. If somebody steals, the law asks what crime has been committed, who committed the crime, and what sanction befits that crime. Togo wants us to add a fourth dimension. What religion do they belong to? Does it matter what religion they belong to? Is there Christian rape, Islam rape, African traditional rape? That's our point.
No. Thank you very much, colleagues. These are my former enemies. So there's no Kapali here. I was surprised to meet them this morning. I said, wow. Because I say, wow, the Lord has his own ways of solving problems. So, but I really said to Pastor Mkhuba, I've been for the past maybe 10, 12 years wanting her to pray for me. I even wanted to come to your church in Soweto. And then there was this little marches and so on and so on. And they say, Kulu is evil. I say, all right, we'll meet one day. And then the Lord just brings this together. So there's no cabal. This thing has not been spoken about before here. But there's nothing between me and Mrs. Togo Kaluva beyond what I've said. I'm not capable of intimidating anyone. I think I have 2,455 enemies, fully armed. I walk the streets because the Lord looks after me. She has security and all of those things. I did not wake up today to say there's a problem. Ever since I started there, I have been WhatsApping her to say I have a problem. The first confrontation happened in June. The last Friday, of June was 27, 26, 25, June 24. That was the first confrontation, because she wanted me to stop highlighting these things about collaborative approach, sharing my research with stakeholders, and so on. And she was clear that these people must not know what we are doing. I said, but I come from an academic background. Your peers are very important. They guide you when you get out of the way. So you can't just think privately and secretly. I even said, working secretly, I'm not used to it. I've never heard of it. So that was in June. The second was in September or something. I was invited by the Apostolic Faith Mission to address their conference in Durban in my capacity as chairperson. And she said, no, you can't go there. We are not going to entertain your private beliefs and so on, because they wanted me to tell them, what is this whole thing we are doing about? So it's not like, then I started in October to say, it looks like I'm going to have to quit this in writing. And on the 9th of November, I put it in a long letter to her to say, based on A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I don't think I belong here. But maybe I can give it a chance. But I don't think I fit in here. So it's not like I woke up and when there was that whole story on the 17th, 18th, 19th, I then went home to sit down with my advisors and everybody and to tell them that I think, because I really disagree with that document, it has got no theological basis. It has no basis of church history, understanding what regulation, how the church works. It has no ecclesiological considerations. When are they going to start studying the church and how it functions before they want to regulate it? So I came to the conclusion that I should resign. So it's got nothing to do with her personally, but I think we just don't agree on as they say. I have never agreed. That's why I've been writing paper after paper and share with so and so. What do you think, Professor so and so? And others say, no, you're stupid, as academics always do. But we accept it. And then some write me long feedbacks. One even said, constitutionally, you cannot have a law that, for example, addresses only one section of the population, especially when it comes to criminal law. He's a professor of law, and he wrote a long, and because I said, this is what I think, but I'm not sure also. He said, no, you can't do it. Then he cited case law, that it can't work. Then I shared it. Then there was no feedback. But it's okay. But there's nothing personal. There comes a time when you simply have to move on. I decided that it's time for me to move on and, pay attention to other issues in our country, as there's a lot of issues that we have to address. But I couldn't continue there because, one, nobody was listening to me. Secondly, my research was being ignored. Thirdly, you go to a meeting, you tell yourself you're a chairperson, and somebody comes and sits right here and says, okay, Reverend Prof, okay, no, it's me now. And for 2 days you are sitting here. I have nothing personally, but man has also what is called dignity. You have to protect your dignity. Yeah. There's nothing to beg for. I go to my church, I preach, and I have a large network of theologians, and now my former enemies are also now going to start calling me and so on. But I can't sacrifice my dignity and my integrity working on something which is draining my energy. But also at the same time, I know it's not going to get anywhere. It won't get anywhere. Zero.
And Just lastly to add on what he just said, we are not the cabal. He has rightly said it. We are his former enemies.
Just before you answer, can we just take the last round of questions? We're going to recognize here the last round of questions, and then before the question starts, you can just respond. Any last questions? So after our ma'am here, yes, you'll be next, and right there at the back, and just a follow-up from Hloni. And then I think that should cover everyone, and we will dismiss the meeting. Thank you. Pastor, you wanted to add something? There you go.
Thank you very much. I heard from the questions that what is wrong is that not just a framework which was presented by the Section 22 committee. When you start talking about regulating the church, when you start talking about passing a law to regulate the church, then that becomes wrong, because we are governed by the Constitution of South Africa, and it does not allow that. And another thing, let us not allow people whom are in offices to act out of their mandates. Mrs. Toko Kaluva is not allowed. She's not mandated to do what she's doing. And I heard another parliamentarian not so long ago saying it during the COGTA discussions. She is not really mandated, given that power. So people who are in offices, they act within their mandates which they are given. You don't bring your own prejudice. You don't bring your own things into the office and you want to enforce that because of your own belief. You are guided by your office, your official duties that you are given. That is what you should stick to. So the problem that we have in our land is that we allow people not really to represent their offices. I mean, it results into power abuse. And the church really has to stand for justice. And because we are people who are supposed to represent God and stand for justice, we cannot allow that to happen. And with regard to the rapes, if I can talk about that a bit, as the others have spoken, really that we are going to say it again and again. Let us unite as a nation, the nation of South Africa, and voice our dissatisfaction with regard to how things are handled in our country. Because there is a problem of law enforcement in our country. So we cannot just point to the church and say, things are happening at church. We have got problems that are happening everywhere, and we don't deny that there are problems that are also happening at church. And Metoko Kaluva said that it's only 5%. She spoke of 5% of those who are in the church who are doing wrong things. So really, if she is aware that there is 5%, she already has the power to can be able to work with existing law enforcement agencies to bring these perpetrators to book. She has got that power, and she has got that power. The CRL has got the right to educate the nation on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. We have got problems which fall under the CRL. We are concerned about children, for instance, whom we see reports of them dying in the mountains everywhere. We also want that problem to be looked at, because we cannot make what is happening in the church an emergency. Rapes are happening at Sangoma's places. They're happening in lawyers' offices. They're happening in companies. The abuse is across. In a university professor's office, you have raised something very important, Professor Kulu, because I know that in universities, we deal with children who go to universities. Now I'm not talking about professors only. I'm talking about even other students who are there, who don't even want to go out of the university because they're waiting for newcomers to come there. And our children go to university, and when they go there, they get violated by those who are already there. They get raped. We have got those problems. These rapes are happening across the country. Let us stand, unite as a nation, and we become vocal, and we talk to our government that let us strengthen our law enforcement agencies. Let us really urge them to do what is right. That is what we should do. Instead of coming to talk about the church as people of the church are these criminals, whereas you are talking about, you say 5%. And another thing, the last thing that I want to say, maybe Professor Kulu, you can help me. If really the Section 22 committee has got names of these abuse victims, why are they keeping on wanting to postpone helping them? They have got a list of people who are violated. They have the right to take this list to the police.
Thank you so much, Pastor. And we're going to take the questions, and just for time's sake, I would like the questions to run through, and then we will conclude with all of the responses. So as we've recognized you, let's go in that order, and you may ask your question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My name is Khomotso Mudise from Eyewitness News. I just have a couple of questions as well, mostly for you, Reverend Kulu. You've answered my first question a bit in the last round. Why did you accept the invite to be part of this committee? Because what the committee was set out to do had been widely explained from the time that we had been covering, from all the times that I've covered the CRL and their mandate and what they believe should happen. So I'm very interested in why you accepted this invite. And it seems to me like the Damascus moment for you was at the point where you were being sidelined and not allowed to do your work. That's what it's coming across as. So why did you accept it? You're saying the church has always been self-regulating. I presume that's a view that you've always held. Why did you want to be part of a process that wants to regulate the church if you believe it's been self-regulating already? That's my first one. My second question for you is, you speak about the chairperson of the CRL intimidating people with police. I don't know if I'm misquoting you, Reverend, please forgive me. But, okay, please just clarify that for me. I got a sense that there's been intimidation from the part of the chairperson. Who is she, or who are they intimidating in particular, specifically? And then just in terms of the Pentecostals and the Charismatics, I want to make sure that I have it right. Is the sentiment from the CRL subliminally or overtly that the Charismatics and the Pentecostals and the Evangelicals are the perpetrators of these atrocities? So does the CRL hold the view that the Charismatics and the Pentecostals are the problem here and they need to be regulated? And then loosely at some point, Reverend, as well as Apostle, you've been speaking about court, but I'm not aware of a matter that's currently in court, or if you are going to court. If you are going to court, what are you going to? Are you going to challenge the draft framework? Yes, I heard mention of court. So are we challenging the draft framework, especially because you say that it had to be signed with your name and you were not part of it? So are we challenging the framework, or what are we heading to court to specifically do? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Can I go? Thank you, Professor. I just have one question. From your experience as the now former chairman of the section, I'm Skalk Strauss. I'm from the Boodskapper. I just wanted to know, it seems like it, and I just want your reaction to it, that the Christian sector is being signaled out, that there is a certain bias against the Christian sector as a whole. What would be your response as a former chairman of the Section 22 Commission on that?
My name is Malume Malafane from the Pan-African Social Justice Alliance. Professor Kulu, the mandate of the Section 22 Committee was to go and consult with various churches, religious formations, and other bodies. According to you, do you think the whole process was going to be transparent, and that the outcome of that process was not predetermined? And I'm saying that judging from the tone of Ms. Kaluva, Dr. Maloma, and others, that there was some insistence that religion should be regulated. And from where you are, do you think the outcome of those consultations, that Mr. Kaluva in particular would have accepted a different result, that religion should not be regulated based on what religious formations, communities, and other churches are saying? Secondly, you mentioned that from when you were appointed that the terms of reference kept changing. What would you say, what were the fundamental changes or the major changes that happened from those terms of references? And you also say the tone when it comes to those terms of references was that there should be self-regulation that has no influence whatsoever from the state. And that, I'm saying that because during all the meetings, Section 22 meetings, you have also alluded to that Mr. Kaluva was always the chairperson. And from where we are, you are supposed to be the chairperson if it was really an independent process, an independent committee from the state, and also Section 22 committee. So in your terms of reference, what were the fundamental changes that happened from when you were appointed and also later on? Thank you.
Shlonim Timkulu from ENCA again. Just a follow-up or a question that wasn't answered. I just want for clarity. I understand that it's not a personal thing against the CRL Rights chairperson, but her name keeps popping up. Is anyone else within the CRL Rights Commission on the radar, or is there anyone else that is seen as problematic, if I can use that word? Because it does seem that the problem is being pointed at one person in particular. And then besides the committee meetings where the chair is said to have taken over, was there actual work that was done by the Section 22 committee? My colleague talks about the consultations that were meant to happen with the churches. So was there actual work that was done besides the sort of vibes, if I can put it that way, that we're picking up were happening when these committee meetings were happening? And then I don't know if, Prof, you can let us know, in your statement you talk about that new members were being brought into meetings that weren't part of the committee initially. Are you able to give us some details about who those people were and how that even happened?
Thank you, Prof. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. On the issue of intimidation, the answer relates to what was being discussed in order that the disruptive elements do not have access to the hearings. So then there would be police, for example, and the people would go there by invitation only, and all of those things. So some of the people, even when we went to launch there, were feeling that the presence of the police was intimidating stakeholders. That was the context I used, intimidation. And then the issue of targeting Pentecostals and so on. Yeah, not generally, even when you hear even some of the questions there, especially the charismatics. Let me start by saying, church history has a thing that says, every time something new happens, society becomes very skeptical. In every era. I mean, Martin Luther was really attacked, like almost physically, as a heresy, as somebody who was misleading the church. But look at what happened. You have all these Methodists and all these mainline churches that came out of one person deciding to hear the voice of God and bow down in front of the Great Commission to say, in the church that is overregulated like the Roman Catholic Church, it's not going to be possible for the Great Commission to be fulfilled. Now let's go there, out to the people. But when the Pentecostals also came, they became a laughing stock. And when the African independent churches came, they became a laughing stock. We grew up in KZN being told that Shembe tried to fly to heaven. And he fell down and died because he thought he had wings. So you always have these things. Then now the charismatics. I would say sometimes they come up with some methodologies that the mainline church and conservative churches are not familiar with. And so they get easily targeted as if they are the enemies of Christianity. But I'm telling you, and I've prophesied, the next generation is going to be children taking over leadership of the church. And everybody will laugh at children. And they'll say, wow, who do they think they are? These are demons. These are demons. So it happens like that. That's why I was emphasizing that we have to go through church history to understand, not just write a document from your own opinions and so on, without creating a sound context from the Christian sector and how it functions. So there is, whenever you hear about these regulations, there's an undertone of targeting Pentecostals and charismatics. They even believe some of the things that are generated by AI, like those pastors you see on Facebook. They believe that no, this is the devil in action. So that's how terrible it is. Not only at CRL. Remember, those people at CRL are not theology or church people. It's called they are lay people. So they're dealing with a subject which is actually very complicated, although because of its presence in society, it may look very simple. It's a very complicated subject, the entirety of Christian faith. The issue of court, no, it's not me going to court. I'm not going to any court. Yes. So I'm just saying that if they drag me to court as a former chairperson, I will then say other things there. But, yeah. So you find those things. There are court cases. I think there are two or three. Two court. Very, very, very. Some of them actually have cited the president. That's why I read all that list. And Zolimki's and everybody. I think I've answered you. Which was?
If you believe the church self-regulates, why did you go?
No. I wanted to read you because you see, this letter formally confirms your appointment as the chairperson of the CRL Rights Commission, Section 22, Ad hoc Committee for the Christian Sector, effective 15 April 2025. Your appointment is in line with Section 22(1) and 2 of the CRL Rights Commission Act 19 of 2002. Your responsibilities as chairperson include conduct extensive research, that's me, to assess the scale and impact of abuses of people's beliefs and harmful religious practices in eroding the religious rights of Christian religious believers, especially where monitoring is slack or absent. That's research. I love research. Calling and presiding over the Section 22 ad hoc committee, that never happened. Consulting with the Secretariat about Section 22 ad hoc committees, any other committees that will come in future, as well as engage in provincial engagements with religious leaders. That was stopped. It never happened. When I started saying, hey, they want me in KZN Council of Churches and so on, it became a problem. So it never happened. But I was already inside and I complained about it. Diligently and competently carrying out the roles and responsibilities of the Section 22 committee as set out in the terms of reference. Terms of reference. Neither in terms of reference of the Section 22 committee. Attend and participate in Section 22 ad hoc committee meetings and provincial engagement with religious leaders. Undertake, that is all members are expected to do. Undertake provincial consultations with religious leaders in the Christian sector. Develop mechanisms and strategies to deal with issues in the religious sector, especially by promoting and protecting the rights of the Christian believer while ensuring that religious freedom is maintained in line with the Constitution. Make recommendations aimed at promoting, I must make recommendations, peer review mechanisms. Peer review is already happening, it's been happening for a long. In your own denomination, your co-pastors are your peers, and they guide you. So I would not have run away from that. In the religious sector, with emphasis on curbing spiritual transgressions. And then feedback with provincial leaders. So I was expected to go to provinces and give them feedback and so on. It never happened. Okay. That's a letter signed. See? Yeah. But it was only 25th of April. I say, this is good. So when I was going to stage with these terms of reference to read, an official comes, hey. The committee will conduct consultations with all religious sectors and organizations throughout the country about development of the legislative framework. Did you hear the legislative framework in that first letter? So, yeah. Which include the establishment of Religious Practice Council, representative of all religious sectors, denominations, registration of religious institutions according to the diverse religious sectors and denominations, registration of religious practitioners according to the diverse religious sectors. Now you see, this I see for the first time, and the cameras are looking at me. Yeah, and I have this, which is what was said to me. And it's in writing. You see, and then we come back. I sent her back this letter. Do you remember this letter of appointment and what it said? There was no reply. So it's not a war against anybody. I'm just saying. And then development of code of conduct and code of ethics for all religious practitioners. Engage with state departments and facilitate the development of the legislative framework, as mentioned about. Now, you don't have to go to my primary school to note that the terms of reference that had been given to me are different from these terms of reference. And I'm already inside. So what do? I send the letter, which is which. So you can see all these things. Nobody is really creating stories against anybody. I did say that the terms of reference kept changing all the time. The terms of reference that are there now are different from the two that I have have read. Did I answer you? In terms of, as you saw in my letter, it is Section 22 committee for the Christian sector. So it's not for the religious sector as a whole. You remember, it's a cultural, religious, and linguistic, but we go to religious, we pick up one sector. Yeah, so that's called targeting. Yes. Did I answer you? Okay. The issue of social justice. You said something about transparency, and my interaction, I really became slightly more unhappy and unsettled when a document that eventually became released on the 19th of December came from nowhere. And I know a little bit of things, about a lot, not much. But I started suspecting, as anyone would do, that this document has been written somewhere else and is being pushed through the cabal. And at least one member of the cabal was able to, out of, as I said, that tell me that no. They actually met with the chairperson somewhere and spoke, and I was seen as blocking, But I told them that because they've already written things, like the regulations that we are talking about, foreign pastors must be like this, and they must not be allowed in the country, and all of that. I say, but there's something called apostolic mission. What do you do when we are in Uganda and the Lord sends you to South Africa? So I was asking myself all these questions, saying maybe there's something that I don't understand, but I think my understanding of theology is more or less balanced. So there was a problem with all of those, the things that they had written there. For example, the charismatics, you see, in the missionary era, the missionaries were establishing communities with a school, a church, and even a clinic, and a new culture of doing things. Abandon the old, take the new culture. When it comes to the newer churches, they go to hotels. That's where they worship. They worship in schools. They worship. Now, suddenly, that is going to be not allowed. So, you can't worship. You must only worship at a church building, which you must organize money to build. And then after that, so that visitation to you, you must have a fixed address as a church. But when you are in the sector, you know that the focus is on the message, evangelization. So you meet with these people that are available this week in a school. You go to somewhere else. You meet in a hotel and all of that. So I was looking at all of these talks that they were having, and I said, there's going to be a problem here. Because the over-regulation now is going to begin to deal with SALCA, local government issues. It's going to start mobilizing the whole country against the Christian church. And I thought this was going to be problematic. So I really, that's why I rejected the document. I thought, no, you can't have this document. And then subsequently, then she took over again. And then she ran it like literally. And I wrote in my resignation letter, because maybe I know it's all over now. If you are aware, you would have noticed that when you took over the chair of the writing team meeting, which you said was a Section 22 committee meeting, which it was not, you drove a hard spear down my lungs. You simply pushed me aside, took over the chair, and directed the writing or editing of the document, and eventually released it without taking the document to the Section 20. I wrote it there to her. So you sit here and you are a pastor. You have all sorts of degrees, and sometimes they get angry when I say, I have 3 doctoral degrees. And so all of that. And then you sit here on one of the subjects that you know very well. And somebody just takes over. For 2 days, you're sitting quietly like him. And you're well dressed like him. You even decided, no, man, I must really take this guy out and put a suit. Maybe they'll take me seriously. That's humiliating. You cannot use a government or public office to humiliate people. That should never be allowed in this country. We have those kinds of people that, because they're there for 5 years or whatever, and maybe they not even finish that, will humiliate everybody. So suddenly professors are nothing because you have a position. Oh, what kind of a country is this? So I said that. And you said something about religion, which was, I've said already that I think the focus was on Christian sector here. It's going to be difficult to deal with other religions for obvious reasons, because the Christian sector is a liberatory kind of religion. It liberates people. It's very free, actually. But try with Judaism and see what will happen. Or Muslims or others, it's going to be very difficult. I'm just saying, this is what worried me. It still worries me even now. And I'm expecting a lot of confusion, but as for my single self, I'm a free man. Freedom has come to me because I've come out of, I know professors of theology at university. Suddenly I was not allowed to talk to them. No, Professor Kumalo, he hates the CRL. You can't talk to Professor. But I've known Professor Kumalo for the past 30 years. No, we can't talk. I am a free man. Fresh air. I don't know, did I answer all the questions?
Sorry, there was another question there. Will you just rephrase and refresh the memory here?
So I asked, just for clarity again, I keep asking this, is the chair of the CRL Rights Committee the only person?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because her name keeps popping up. And then Prof did mention that in the meetings that other people were being broken that were not part of the committee.
Oh, yeah.
Who are those people? How did that happen? And was any actual work done?
Say that in English, the last sentence.
So was any actual work done by the Section 22 committee besides the meetings that were happening that were being chaired by the chair
Okay. No, it's fine. Let me start with the last one. No, there was no work done. They came in on the 1st of October when we launched there. They were not there. I was there doing the things that are supposed to be doing the things that are written in my letter of appointment. You remember research, talking to religious sector and so on and so on. It was difficult to get them early because I think there was a selective process to meet with his church and not with his church. And then while they were planning to go and meet with his church, then somebody in his church says something, then they take another route. So it took from April to end of September because it was a very selective process. And so certain people were excluded and had to be excluded because of how it was working. So when they came, she took them through orientation, and then we went to the launch. That in the launch, I thought in orientation maybe I will present one of my research findings. It wasn't. Then in the launch, that my role was to read the terms of reference, which I had, but then there was a whole new set. And then after the launch, I wrote saying that I think we need 2 days of orientation of these people because, you see, some of the churches there are not entirely Christian. Yeah. ZCC, the Chamber, which are all the factions are represented there, 5, 6 factions. They are not entirely Christian, and their orientation is very different. Yeah, their doctrines are, it's a combination of culture, a little bit of religion, a little bit of, and maybe 5% Christianity. Some of them don't read the New Testament at all. And some of them say that, the church was started in Nazareth before Christ was there. So you find all of those. So there was a problem of that. So that we can talk with one voice, I propose that what happened was that it was simply ignored. That's when I was told that no, you can't call meetings here. We will call meetings for you. And there were no minutes taken. So there are no minutes. The one time I took minutes, and when I read them back, I was asked, who said you must take the minutes? So, but I know I'm not playing victim. I'm just saying, slowly, I started realizing that this thing was not what I thought it was. And then there was a question about Mrs. Kalov. No. That's a one-person show, all of it. Even those many recordings you find in TikTok and so on of her talking about it, it's only her who talks. So that's why her name, everybody is mentioning. I don't even know other members. Some I knew them before, like Advocate, because in my other life I'm also a political analyst. So I know Advocate Mandola and so on. But other members, I don't know them. I've never met them. We've never sat in one room. So the reason why I think people keep on talking about her is because that is her that is running the show. That's how it is. And I don't think that people are hating her and so on. They don't know who else is a member of that commission. I also don't know.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think just with time, what we will do is just after the press briefing, we will give you another opportunity there. And as we are concluding shortly, if we can just get last round of comments from the panel here, and then we will officially close for the press briefing. We have been going since 11 a.m., so I can imagine how they're also feeling. But they're ready to answer, and they're not running away. So we can start on that side, Pastor.
We thank God today for this media briefing, for what the professor has decided to do, and it is something that is a consolation to the church. And though the things that we have been hearing, some of them are scary, but maybe not that scary when you have heard that people who hear from God, they should be taken to psychiatric hospitals from the very same chairperson of the CRL, and calling our belief the thing, and all the derogatory words that she has been uttering. We don't know who wronged her from the Christian side, but today we thank God for all the developments, and we wish you well, Professor. We wish you well.
Today's development actually confirm what churches have warned over the years now. This process was not about protecting people from abuse. I've mentioned earlier that, and many others have, that abuse is already addressed by criminal laws and civil law. What we are seeing is a move towards state control of religion, and that is unconstitutional and dangerous. So we welcome the resignation of the Section 22 Committee Chair, but accountability cannot stop there. The committee has lost credibility and it must be disbanded. The chair of the CRL Rights Commission must step aside. The church belongs to Jesus, not the state. And South Africa's constitution guarantees freedom of religion, and we will defend that freedom. And not for ourselves, but for future generations who must inherit a free church.
If you've done research at a very superficial level, you'll understand the concept of probability. South Africa is supposed to have about, is it 62 or 66 million people? 85% of them, according to Statistics South Africa, are Christian. So on a balance of probabilities, like what is the probability that if crimes will be committed by a Christian as opposed to other people, if they constitute 85% of 66 million people? The probability is high. Two, if you set over them leaders, what is the probability that out of a Hindu, Muslim, Jew, traditionalist and Christian preacher, a crime will be committed by a Christian preacher? That's pure academia. Somebody who has gone to school would have understood that and would have understood the rationale behind Parliament saying all the recommendations are necessary. Now, Candice Owen, you must know her, she's an activist in the US. She was interviewing a CIA agent. And the question was, why are all world powers, China, Russia, Rwanda, why are they targeting Christians? And this man says, from the more than 40 years work I've done as a CIA agent, we have come to the conclusion that because it's only Christians who cannot be controlled. Control Christians and you have society. Togo is obsessed with that. She wants to control us. Don't forget that.
Yes, from my side, thank you very much, and thank you, Prof, for having the boldness to do what you felt you needed to do in the conviction. I think basically from us, the frustration of having to deal and fight this since 2017, we thought we had dealt with it, it was done, but it resurfaced again last year. and the amount of time that it wastes. If I can tell you the hours and hours and hours we have spent sitting in meetings, days we have been sitting in meetings trying to sort things out, and the money that has been spent, where we could have taken that time to do our jobs and work with the community and do what we do. You know, now we've got to defend our right to exist. So once again, you've heard what is said, and it's not that we do not understand the role of the CRL, and it's not that we don't appreciate the importance of the CRL. So it's not, and as you've heard previously, that they have the powers now to intervene. They can intervene in any church, any ministry, at any time. They have the powers to do that. So basically, they can do and must do their job. But when it comes, and then protect the church. So that is the first issue. But knowing that we will continue working with the CRL. You know, it's not that we don't want to work with the CRL. It's not that we don't want accountability. But we cannot have state regulation. You understand? We can't have an extra law for the church above any other citizen. That doesn't make sense. So once again, our goal is simple. It's unwavering. A South Africa where every person remains free to celebrate, speak about, and live out their faith within the bounds of the Constitution and without state control of religion. Period. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our panelists.